Hey guys, I'm Tony. I have a question for you. How many of you have seen videos of people diving into the ocean? Now, usually when it comes to swimming in the ocean, people do one of two things. They either snorkel or they scuba dive. Now, I have a whole box here. It's a little heavier than I thought. Who made this? Okay. Oh, there's water in it. Let's pretend this is the ocean, okay? All right, so the people do two things. They either snorkel or they scuba dive. I didn't realize there was real water, okay. Now, the snorkeler pretty much stays on top of the water. It's this guy right here, he's on top of the water. All right, they look down into the depths of the ocean and take everything in from a distance. And while that might seem nice at first glance, they really only see the ocean and everything in it on a surface level. Now, this is gonna get really good. I'm excited about it. The snorkeler has no way of knowing what the ocean holds when they just float along the waves. But when a swimmer decides to scuba dive, they go deeper in the ocean and they see so many things they didn't before. Maybe they come across a jellyfish. I wouldn't want to come across a jellyfish, okay? Let me just say that right now. But maybe they find like coral. I don't think this is coral either, but they find like schools of fish or even like a sunken ship. But if they don't take that plunge to go beneath the surface of the waves, they'll never know what's in store for them. Let me put this back because my days are going. All right, so going deeper into the water really pays off for a scuba diver. I'd guess that a scuba diver gains like more meaning, they gain more appreciation, wonder, excitement, and love for the ocean than a snorkeler does, because scuba divers, they're diving deep. Okay, it's kind of like this. It's getting serious. When I was in elementary school, I started cheering. That's right, folks. I was a cheerleader. It was absolutely my hobby. It was like my most favorite thing to do. When I started, it was honestly about just having fun. Oh my gosh, someone's really excited about that motorcycle. When I started, it was honestly about having fun. But as I got older and got into middle school, like the teams that I was on just started going to competitions, and it took cheerleading to like a whole nother level. Now we had to try out for the competition teams, and I really, really wanted to be on it. But if I'm gonna be honest, I hadn't really learned to flip and the techniques to do it. There were a few times when I tried to do a backflip. I almost broke my neck. I'm gonna be honest about that, all right? Just a vulnerable moment. And I was also in front of my friends. Real embarrassing, folks, okay? Gosh, I still have nightmares about that. All right, anyways, I asked my mom if I could go to lessons. Now, it was very hard, and it took a lot of extra time. But honestly, it was so worth it. I learned how to do backflips. I became way more flexible. And while making the competition team was so much fun, diving deeper into learning about cheerleading, it made me like a better teammate overall. I learned so much more about the sport, and I ended up enjoying it more than I ever had. I had to really dive deep to figure out how to be a great cheerleader. But totally glad I did, because the end result was so good. Now let me ask you a question. Oh yeah, I'm getting personal. I'm in your business. All right, that was intense. Have you ever thought about what it would look like to go deep in your faith? Like to really grow in your relationship with God. Maybe you've wondered how to even tell if you're going deeper in your faith, or how to know if you're making any progress. Maybe you're not sure what it means to even grow spiritually. All you know is that like scuba diving, there seems to be a deeper part to this whole faith thing. And maybe you can't seem to figure out how to get there. Okay, I think there are a lot of ways people think they can deepen their faith, but they all usually have one thing in common: uno. That's one in Spanish, more. We think growing in our faith means knowing more, being more, or doing more. It means more than we are right now. Some people think you can grow deep in faith by learning more stuff. So they memorize a lot of scripture and learn tons of things about the Bible. But let's be honest, you can know a lot about the Bible and still not really know God. Just having more knowledge isn't going to grow your relationship with God. I'm just saying, okay. Other people think you can go deeper in your faith simply by going to church more, by just showing up. We all come to church for different reasons. Some of you, girls, boys, I'm just saying, okay? Some of us are here because we have to be. Some of us are here because our friends, or like fun games or free food. Yeah, that's you. That's wrapping up the pizza in napkins and taking it home. It's a shame. Okay, just kidding. But those aren't bad reasons to come here. Some of you are here because you want to have a deep faith. But perfect church attendance isn't a guaranteed way to go deeper either. Can you really grow spiritually just by walking into a church? I mean, did you learn to swim by just jumping into the pool? No, you probably almost drowned. I actually tried to learn how to swim by doing that. It was really bad. Do you get smarter simply by walking into school, folks? No, I don't think so. What if growing deeper in your faith isn't actually about the perfect combination of going to church more or memorizing stuff about the Bible? What if those things aren't the point at all? Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, Tony, if those aren't the things or the point, then what is? How do I pursue a deep faith? Or maybe you're thinking this, I don't even know what I think about all this faith stuff. Why would I even want to go deeper if I'm not sure if it's real? I got good news for you. No matter where you stand, I think that if there's anyone who can help us answer these questions, it's Jesus. And thankfully, he had a lot to say about it. There's a story I want us to take a look at in the Bible that's found in the book of Matthew. Now, Matthew is a book written about Jesus by one of his closest followers, a guy named, you guessed it, Matthew. Okay, as this story starts, a big group of people had gathered around Jesus to hear him speak. And like a lot of us, they wanted to know how they could grow spiritually. So they wanted to know how they could know God more and what they needed to do to deepen their faith. Okay. At the time, Jesus had just finished giving a famous message that people sometimes call the Sermon on the Mount. That's really just a fancy title that means Jesus preached a message on the side of a mountain. Which is probably so cool. I mean, the view, sunset, I don't know, I'm just saying. That message is not famous because it happened on a mountain, but because of what it was about. The entire message was all about what you should do if you want to grow spiritually. It was about, wanting to have a deep faith and what you should do about it. Okay, here's what Jesus was talking about. What he was talking about was kind of surprising to people though. I mean, you see, like us, they thought that growing deeper in faith was about what you know about God. The more you know, the more you grow, right? But Jesus knew that when it comes to faith, what we know is not nearly as important. Here it goes, you gotta pay attention to this, lean in! What we know is not nearly as important as what we do. Mic drop. I could end right now, but I'm not, I'm gonna keep going. At the end of his sermon, Jesus started talking about houses. That sounds really random, I know. It was random at the time too, okay? But Jesus always had a point to his stories, and this one was no exception. Here's what he said. Let me get my phone out and go to my almost got distracted there. My Instagram notification came through. Turn those things off if you're gonna read the scriptures. Here we go. Okay, got it. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet, it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Does anyone here know anything about building houses? Not really, me neither. But let's just say you were building a house. Building it on top of a rock, like Jesus said, seems like a pretty good idea, right? Just look at this house. You can tell it's been through a lot. It's old and probably seen its fair share of storms. As a matter of fact, if you look at this picture, this is actually from CNN. This house is standing alone, not because it bought all this land, it's because all the other houses were legit wiped away. So you ask, why is this house still standing? I mean, why? I'm gonna tell you why. It has a firm, solid foundation. It was built for the storm. And that's what you want when you're building, because you don't want your house to fall apart or collapse. A house built on a weak or unsupported foundation, like sand, will get knocked over pretty easily. Without a strong, sturdy foundation like a rock, I dropped it. It was gonna be really cool. Okay. A rock, probably bigger than this. Without a foundation like a rock, a house is weak and unstable. In Jesus' message, he told us that our faith can be just like one of those houses, the one on a weak and unstable foundation, or the one built strong and sturdy. In other words, we can have flimsy faith or solid, deep faith. And I don't know about you, but I definitely want a solid and deep relationship with God. So the question is, how do we get that kind of faith? In other words, how did Jesus say we could deepen our faith? Let's look back at how Jesus started his story. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Jesus said that the reason the house in his story made it through the storm wasn't just about the knowledge of the people who built it. The house wasn't saved just because the residents knew about the storm and knew about construction. The reason the house stood firm was because the builders acted on their knowledge. Clearly, these guys were thinking, okay? They actually built their house upon a rock. They acted on what they knew was good and wise and right. And because they did, the house withstood the storm. Withstood the storm. The same is true for faith. Jesus said the key to growing a deep faith is in the doing. In other words, it's more than just hearing or knowing about God that will help us have a strong and deep faith. It's putting what we know to practice. It's doing what we know God has called us to do. God uses our actions, not just our knowledge, to grow our faith. Here's what I've learned. God honors our obedience when we follow his plan. When we begin to do some of the things that he asks of us, God notices, even when it's difficult, even when it's not the popular thing to do, even when it's not something we really want to do. When we do what God has called us to, it's an act of faith. And the more we do it, the deeper we'll grow in our relationship with God. God grows our faith through our actions, not just our knowledge. And I think we can start taking action by doing these things. Number 1, learn. You can't do the things God calls you to do if you aren't sure what those things are. So start by learning what God asks people to do to grow their faith. You can ask maybe like your small group leader for help on where to start, but just like scuba diving, you can't just dive into the depths of the ocean right away. You've got to learn how to swim first. So whether you know nothing about this whole faith thing or you're here every single week, one of the first things you can do to begin growing in your faith is simply learn what God says about the way Christians should live. Number 2, do. Then pick just one thing you've learned and start putting it to practice in your life. Maybe it's treating other people the way you want to be treated. Maybe it's spending time every day talking to God in prayer. Maybe it's memorizing a Bible verse. Maybe it's serving someone in your community who needs something, or maybe even someone in your school. These are all things God encourages us to do as we grow in our faith. So choose one and start doing it this week. And just like scuba diving, the stronger you get, the deeper you'll be able to go in your relationship with God. Those are good notes. I hope you took those down. Learn, do. All right, remember this. God uses our actions, not just our knowledge, to grow our faith. So don't just hear what God says. Think about how you can live it out. Think about how you can act on those things. And as you're thinking about that, I want you to ask yourself this question. What's one thing you know God has called people to do? Now you go think about that, and I'm gonna go scuba dive. Let's see. Ooh, here I go.